This video will show how to change from powered lift struts to manual gas springs on a 2016 BMW 435i Gran Coupe F36 chassis. Key to this project was going to be holding up the weight of the tailgate when the struts came off. Here's what I came up with. I made a jig out of some spare MDF plywood and a coupler, and here's how I use those. The jig goes on the metal latch part of the tailgate. The coupler goes over that, and then I can use any size 2x4 I need to very securely hold up the weight of the tailgate. I have all the interior trim panels and pieces removed here. I'll show you how that goes back together at the end of the video. This is the ECU, electronic control unit, for the tailgate system, and I disconnected those 3 connectors to prevent any unexpected surprises from happening. Ready now to take off the struts. The strut is held on with a claw type of mechanism. Inserting a screwdriver opens up that claw, and you can see it close back down when I withdraw the screwdriver. After a fair amount of frustration, I disconnected the strut connector by inserting a screwdriver as shown between the 2 pieces. At this point, I have the original lift struts out and the new gas springs in, and I'm sorry I don't have any video of that, but it is actually quite straightforward once you have the weight of the tailgate supported and you know how those lift struts attach to the car. The vendor for the gas springs also provides very good information. More on that shortly. So, let's see how it works. Here is what I removed from the car. The astute observer will notice that the struts are a different length. And I don't think that happened when I was taking them off the car. So I think while they were still installed, I think they were unsynchronized, if you will. And if so, that would certainly explain some of the problems I was seeing with the difficulty opening and closing the tailgate at times. This is what I put in the car: 2 gas springs provided by liftsupportsdepot.com. They were really good. It's a good website, and they have good customer support. And this is the technical information for the gas springs, including the part number that begins with PM. With respect to the physical attributes of the springs, that is the length, stroke, and compressed length, I chose this. For the targeted opening height with the springs, this is the second highest position with the standard lift struts. With respect to the force required, that gets a little bit more complicated and involves a little bit of engineering 101. I'll include some info on that at the end of the video. And here's how it all came together. Opening the tailgate requires almost no force. Closing it takes about 15 pounds of force to get it started down. Something I was concerned about was the possibility of any warnings that might come up with the lift struts removed. Here I am in the car with it running in drive, and there's no warnings anywhere. But now if I reach down and press the trunk release button, you do get the warnings just as you should. Time to put the rear compartment back together. I'm going to start with the left-hand side. This is the actuator for the power unlock for the tailgate, and it needs to be out of the way, so I've taken that down, and you'll see how that goes back together. This is a connector for the courtesy light that goes in the large left side panel, and this is a connector for the cigarette lighter. Back up in here is the connector for the lift strut, the powered lift strut, and I've gotten that out of the way, secured it to another wiring bundle just so it won't rattle. I'll point out one other thing. Right in here there was a rubber boot that came down from that plastic fitting to the lift strut. I've removed that just so it won't impinge on the gas spring at all and cause any problems. And it really doesn't make any difference in the looks of it, as you'll see at the end. This is the first panel that goes back in. It would be the last one if you're disassembling. And don't forget the connector for the courtesy light and the cigarette lighter. Getting this panel in can be a little bit of a challenge, and initially you need to have it at a bit of an angle as shown here, because the front edge of the panel has to go underneath the interior. In my car here it's camel colored, and the top also has to go underneath that gray colored piece at the top. For reference, you're looking at the left rear seat, and you can see the left passenger door open. The panel is also held down with the cargo hold down ring, and that gets a plastic cap that just pops on or off easily with a flathead screwdriver. Here's the next panel to go in, and it goes in quite easily. Next up, the tool tray. Here you can see it's in place, but it still needs the plastic nuts installed. The tool tray has been secured with the plastic nuts, and the drive unit for the power unlock has been reinstalled. This is the last piece to install on the left side. It covers up this gap, and it's held on with 3 push on or pry off clips, which I've annotated in the picture. And here is where those 3 clips are on the back side of that panel. When taking this panel off, it can take a fair amount of force to pry those clips out, especially for the forwardmost one. And I would also suggest, if you're taking this off, take a lot of pictures. Take very good note how it lines up. Many pictures I would suggest, because everything has to be lined up just right for it to go on. The left side's complete, so time to start on the right hand side of the rear compartment. I'm not going to go into any detail showing that step by step. It's very similar to the left side, and actually a little bit simpler. The last piece to put in is the rear trim piece. The rear panel is in and secured with the plastic rivets, but it also gets 2 screws, one on either side. These screws may look nice, but I don't like them. They're very difficult to get in and out without some sort of special tool. So I replaced those with a flat washer, which I countersunk and painted flat black, and a screw. I'll show you now how I determine the force required for the gas springs. The first piece of information needed would be the weight of the tailgate. I took several readings at different heights, averaged them together, and that weight came out to 53.2 pounds. Next, I measured the distance from the pivot point for the tailgate to the attachment point for the gas spring, and the distance, which was 8.75 inches, and then from there to the rear of the tailgate, which is 37 inches. And now we can solve our moments problem. Knowing the weight and the moment arms, we know that moment 1 must be equal to moment 2. And you can follow my math, but we can solve for force 1, which is the force supplied by 2 gas springs, and that's why it's divided by 2. So I found a couple of gas springs with a force of 141 pounds that met all my other requirements, installed them, but I found that they were a little low on the force. I thought it took a little bit of effort to open the tailgate, and that's not terribly surprising because all these measurements are only so accurate. So I stepped them up to a force of 151 pounds, and that's what was installed and what I showed you earlier. A couple of final thoughts. I can't imagine doing this job without an assistant. She helped to maintain my support, my 2x4 support for the tailgate, maintain that in place when I was removing the struts, and also shimming it to the right height for both removing struts and putting on gas springs. The cost to me for doing this was $60 for the gas springs. I priced out the struts at the dealer. They were $350 each, so that'd be $700. And I'm sure with the labor, it would be a pretty big number. I've heard some things that it's about $2,000 at the dealer, and I can easily believe that. If you decide to do this to your car, I hope this helps, and best of luck.